gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's September the 11th, 2023. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined this morning by Izubee Charles, Stephen Wagner, and our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day. And the news of the day is the news of the weekend. We got recruiting stuff to talk about. Miami picked up a big 2025 commitment last night. But guys, first we have to start with the Texas A&M game, and it all came together for the Hurricanes at Hard Rock Stadium Saturday night. A very impressive victory when you consider the way the game started with the special team blunders and the way they had to just stay calm, never panic, and fight their way out of that hole, and then sequentially take charge of the ball game and then finish it off in grand style. Matt, let me start with you. We all hoped, everybody hoped that as part of the Canes Nation, that the Hurricanes would be different this season, that they would come out in these games against real teams and play better and actually start beating some of these real teams, which is something they haven't done a lot of lately. And it all came together on Saturday night. And Mario Cristobal could not have drawn that up better.
Yeah, I mean, as you guys all know, this is my happy, excited face. So I'm happy and excited. On the way up there, look, before the game, we talked on the show, Gary, about this, but, we both predicted wins. I predicted a high-scoring win. I think you predicted a high-scoring win, too, actually.
I don't remember you predicting a win.
Yeah, several times.
I remember Matt predicting any kind of win.
You're just used to me never predicting wins.
You're the negative Nancy of the group here.
Look, I know you don't listen to me, but I talked about how Miami had good matchups, how I watched Texas A&M film. They're not very good. How I said they only rush 4, how Miami would have some opportunities when they had the ball on offense to put up a lot of points in the passing game because they only had one returning cornerback. You don't listen to any of this stuff, of course.
Do you remember any of this?
And I said how Lance Guidry, if he held them under 21 points, he'd be a genius. But that A&M would have trouble running the ball. My only concern was the cornerbacks against the receivers. You can watch back the tape, Gary. I mean, I know you don't like to listen to me.
You're taking bows on Tyler Van Dyke's back.
I'm not taking bows. I'm just saying what happened, because then I said I'm trying to tell a story, but you're interrupting. So anyway, I said that on the show, and then I drive up to the stadium, and I felt like I should have retracted it, because literally as I'm driving up, and I told Gary this when I got there, I was concerned because at the Golden Glades interchange, the 95 Turnpike intersection for Stephen, who doesn't know this area that well yet, there's literally a funeral procession, which I've never seen before driving on 95 at all, let alone to a game. So there's a funeral procession that I pass on my way to the game at the Golden Glades, going up 95. Then I come from sunny Coconut Grove. I'm driving still up there, and there's the funeral procession. And I look above the stadium, and there's just a black cloud above the stadium. I mean, it was sunny when I left Coconut Grove, and now there's this black cloud literally over Hard Rock Stadium. And I was like, oh my God, like this is an omen, If I was religious, I would have, bet all my money on Texas A&M at that point, because, it was like an omen to me that I never should have picked Miami publicly, because me, I don't really like to ever pick games if I don't have to. but when you did watch film of this game, Texas, look, this is just the truth, okay? Like Miami, it's a great win. They beat a top 23 team with a lot of top recruits. This was the most talent, probably the 4th best team they're going to face talent-wise. And there's only one other team now that's really ranked ahead of them consistently in the polls, because the ESPN whatever power index has North Carolina way below Miami. But anyway, with that said, like I said on this show that Gary doesn't listen to apparently, Texas A&M, they're not that good. They're not that good a team. They won 5 games last year. They don't play cohesively. Their offensive line, honestly, it's shocking Miami didn't get any sacks, because their offensive line is a little bit of a shambles. They're a very bad run-blocking offensive line. They held up fairly well in pass protection. And the points that they scored, we're going to get into this later in the week, but the points they scored and the yards they got in the second half, were mainly off. Like they couldn't just do what they normally do. They had to line up and do what Shannon Dawson did. Basically, they started lining up in jumbo sets, throwing a running backs out of that. Throwing to a tight end at one point, who normally stays in the block. Like just doing weird stuff that normally you would see Texas A&M just throwing to their 4 great receivers. Right? They weren't doing that. So I thought that was interesting. Lance Guidry really did a great job taking them out of their game. He actually called a better game than I thought he would, because I was concerned after his past and watching the opener that he's going to do the same stuff, lining 7 up at the line, lining 6 up at the line, and then dropping defensive ends into coverage on slot receivers. He was brilliant. He didn't do that very often, only a few times. He really played more of a straight-up defense, recognizing that, hey, look what I showed A&M in the opener. This is what Petrino's going to expect. This is what he's game planning against. So I'm not going to give that to him. I'm going to go with a different, style of defense that's more standard, right? You didn't see this crazy movement at the snap, this crazy pre-movement they've been doing previously. And it really worked, because the whole first half, Texas A&M's offense was out of sorts. And if not for those special teams miscues, Miami would have been up by 3 touchdowns, So that was fantastic. Second half, they went in the locker room. Second half, obviously, Petrino made those adjustments where he started going to jumbo sets and throwing out of the jumbo sets and really sort of throwing a lot more at Miami and realizing, hey, we can't run the ball with this offensive line, so we'll just throw it. He threw the ball. If you take out the first 2 runs, which were the first 2 plays of the third quarter, he threw the ball 80% of the time in the second half. In the first half, it was 50-50 run pass, 17 runs, 17 passes. So he found some answers in the second half. But listen, overall, great win for Miami. Both coordinators, to me, off the charts, how they prepared for this game, which is something that we have not been able to say in a long, long time. Very proud of those guys, very proud of this team. Great win for the Miami Hurricanes, and fans should be excited, rightfully so. I mean, even if Miami loses a few games down the road, which they still can, because like I said, the Aggies aren't this great team in my mind. Even if they wind up losing still 3 or 4 more games, you can see where this is heading. This is a much more focused, physical, better team than last year. And every year, Mario's just going to keep on building on it. So this is what I keep saying. This is why I keep saying within 2 or 3 years, this is a championship level team in the playoffs. Because you can see the direction it's going. And it's just a process, though. It takes a little bit of time. And everyone wants to say we're there now. We might only lose to FSU and that's it. Like, slow down a little bit. We won 1 game against a 23 ranked team that probably shouldn't have been in the top 25. So slow down a little bit, but be excited a little more about this year. Certainly, I think Miami now has a chance to win 9 or 10 for sure, whereas before I had them at 8. And be really excited. Be really excited for the future.
Well, the coming weeks will determine how good Texas A&M is. Okay, but I do think that the way Miami played on Saturday night is a game changer in terms of expectations. And you're right, everybody's got to slow down. We keep saying on the message boards, 1 week at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 week at a time. Everybody is very excited, though, by what they saw on Saturday, including the pollsters who elevated Miami to number 22 in the polls now. Duke is 21, North Carolina is 20. And then you got to go all the way up to, I think, number 3, if I'm not mistaken, where Florida State resides for Miami opponents. So the expectations, I think, have changed now. You're ranked. People are paying more attention to what you do on game day now. And you're looking at the next 3 games and you're saying Miami can be 5-0, very possibly going. They should be, unless they screw up. And 5-0 going to North Carolina for a big game up there in Chapel Hill. So you could not have scripted this any better if you're Mario Cristobal. And he will do this. But it is very important that they keep the pedal to the metal and keep working to get better, because there were some mirages out there as well. I mean, the special teams blunders can be corrected. I mean, you can work with Jacoby George on catching punts. You can work with the blocking wedge on not allowing a rusher to run right through the middle of your wedge and block a punt. That stuff can be corrected in practice. But Izubee, I'm coming to you with this one. Apologize in advance. It's a loaded question. But in the first half, we watched the defense and Lance Guidry dial up all types of blitz schemes that had Texas A&M confused. A lot of pressure on the quarterback. They were able to stifle Texas A&M's offense pretty well. I mean, even with the issues Miami had in the first half, I think they had something like a 270 to 147 yard edge in total offense at halftime of that football game on Saturday. In the second half, the defense, I believe, gave up about 280 yards of offense to Texas A&M. That is a lot of yards. I thought the pass defense got very, very, very average at best. Receivers had way too much cushion. The pass rush wasn't as effective because you lost 2 starting defensive linemen in the first half who were not in the game now. So that tightened the rotation, and you lost 2 of your better pass rushers. And on top of that, A&M was getting rid of the ball quicker. They adjusted. And, Bobby Petrino is going to adjust. But so they gave up a lot of yards in the second half of Izubee, and that should keep them humble in the defensive room. The Pro Football Focus grades for the team in general were not off the charts. They grade every play, so they're seeing the good and the bad. And, while everyone was euphoric about the victory, and justifiably so, there's a lot that was in there for this team to get better at. Should we be at all concerned, Izubee, at all those yards that were given up in the second half?
That's my answer. I'm not.
What are you, an Oregon fan now?
No, just a big zero. That's my concern level right now with all the yards in the second half. I mean, you kind of said it a little bit. Miami had to deal with a bit of injuries with losing Messidor and losing Branson Dean. So the defensive line that was getting in the backfield and causing Connor Wagner to kind of get pressured a little bit. The rush wasn't there. And another thing that I thought too is I felt like Texas A&M was kind of pushing the ball more in the second half and getting it to their playmakers. I feel like in the first half, Texas A&M wasn't targeting Evan Stewart as much. I feel like I can't pull up the stats right now, but I feel like if we checked out the difference between the first half and the second half, his targets probably doubled. And I feel like they just kept going to their playmaker where they should have done that all game. And I feel like I kind of look at the bright side. Miami, obviously, those 2 guys, Noah Thomas and Evan Stewart, combined for 5 touchdowns. Granted, it was against New Mexico. Held Evan Stewart to 0 touchdowns. Obviously, got a bunch of yards, but useless yards, nothing in return for that. And Noah Thomas got that quick, touchdown near the goal line. So I'm not as concerned as other people are about Miami's performance with the pass defense in the second half, just because of the injuries. And I feel like Texas A&M was pushing the ball much, much, much more downfield and really, really trying to kind of, put everything in full gear and, trying to press for a comeback. So my concern isn't very high at all. I was really, really impressed with Lance Gator's defense in the secondary. Kind of, Gary, you mentioned it a little bit. They would bend a little bit, give a wide receiver a yard or 2, and then you see James Williams or Jaden Davis coming in and getting tackled before the sticks, which is something I really like. Miami closing in on these playmakers and making the stops when it mattered. So I'm always kind of the happy-go-lucky guy, but I really don't see a big concern with how the secondary performed in that second half.
All right. So, we've had an enormous amount of coverage of this game on the website the last several days, and you guys can check that out. And we're also going to be doing some additional analysis here in the next few days of certain things that we saw in the game. And we start off with a film study of Shannon Dawson's attack versus Texas A&M, and how it's a warning to every defensive coordinator out there the Miami Hurricanes will face. And Matt, you went to work in the film room after the game, and one thing that was clear, Shannon Dawson can dial it up. And it's not that he's like reinventing football. It's not that he's running plays that nobody's ever seen before. The one that came to mind was when he had Jacoby George motioning towards the line of scrimmage and towards the backfield, and then they snapped the ball, and Jacoby George pivoted back outside, and he dumped the screen pass out there, and Jacoby George took it into the end zone for a touchdown. You very astutely remembered seeing a variation of that play, very similar, run last week by the Kansas City Chiefs, for example. And you were all excited when you found that, and you sent me an email and taking more bows. Look what I just found, as you're very prone to do when you occasionally uncover a nugget such as that. But so it's It's not like he was reinventing football by any stretch of the imagination. But what he was doing was calling an amazing game. And he was finding the right plays at the right times, and he was setting things up. And, just on that particular play that we're talking about, Miami lined up at the line of scrimmage with that jumbo offensive line look that they used in the Miami-Ohio game where they ran the ball every time. This time they gave Texas A&M the look. They knew Texas A&M would have prepared for it because it was something that they featured in the Miami-Ohio game. And then they passed out of it, and Texas A&M was caught off guard, touchdown. So, Matt, you did the analysis of Shannon Dawson. You think opposing defensive coordinators have a lot of reason to be very concerned moving forward. Explain to us a little bit more about why you came up with that obvious conclusion.
Okay, well, the Chiefs ran that in the Super Bowl, and I think they'd run it a couple of times during the regular season, or at least once during the regular season. But yeah, it's a copycat league in the NFL. It's a copycat league in college football, if you want to consider all the conferences in one league. Somebody finds something that works, someone else is going to make it their own. And Shannon Dawson actually ran it better. We have gifts of both. He actually ran the same play much better than the Chiefs ran it, because he actually got the tight end, Cam McCormick, in front of the play, and he had Jalen Rivers, the left tackle, knock the cornerback out of the play, who was originally covering Jacoby George on that 3-yard touchdown. But the funniest part of that play to me is you can't see it on the GIF, and you can't really see it on TV, but you can imagine it, right? So Cam McCormick is lined up on the right side of the offensive line, next to the right tackle, behind the right tackle. At the snap, the entire line goes to its right, because that's the direction the play fake is going to go in. I think it was Don Chaney at running back. And McCormick circles behind the offensive line to get to the left side, because Jacoby George is coming left to right and then going back to the left side to catch that little pass for the touchdown. So he's getting in front of him. And as Cam McCormick's running to the left, guess who's running in from right defensive end to try and get up on the back end of the play and make a tackle of Don Chaney? It's Shamar Stewart. And you could see Shamar is rushing in, and all of a sudden he sees Cam McCormick running right at him from the opposite side. Like, what's he doing here? And then Cam McCormick literally intentionally avoids touching Shamar Stewart and just goes around him to get in front of the play. And then Shamar just sort of like hesitates for a second, just keeps going in. But you could just see, you could just imagine him thinking, like, what the hell's going on? I don't understand what's happening. And then the play just goes right behind him, which is even better. So, I mean, like, if you're not a Shamar Stewart fan anymore because he didn't come to Miami, just watch the GIF over and over again. It'll give you a lot of enjoyment. But we did look, immediately after the game in the last 2 days now, at some of the great things the offense did and some of the great things the defense did in this game, because there was a lot of them, and we picked, a handful just to show some of the things they did. We'll get back to offense in a second, but like Lance Guidry, for instance, there was 2 clear plays where he brilliantly essentially baited Bobby Petrino into taking a check down pass on 3rd down and 4 or 3rd down and 5 or whatever, 3rd down and 6, knowing that he had the secondary with their eyes up, ready to attack the play. So he literally set a guy free on the under route with the defensive backs understanding, as soon as that ball's out, you rush up, because that's the guy who's going to be open. That's where you're going to be throwing to. And both plays ended with the series ending on that play. I mean, that's 2 third down versus they didn't get, because that's how Lance Guidry drew it up against Bobby Petrino. I mean, again, we were talking about this last week. The conversations Gary doesn't remember anymore. And we were talking about how this was Lance Guidry's moment, how he'd been spurned by these major programs to become a defensive coordinator because he runs these unorthodox schemes that people just don't really run in major college football. And you could see in this game that, yeah, Texas A&M did have over 400 yards. They did have like 280-something yards in the second half. They did have success. We're not going to deny that. They had success. Okay, they did. But there was some key, and they were 8 for 18 on 3rd downs, which is very good. But there were some key moments where things that Lance Guidry did, most defense coordinators don't do. And there are some things Lance is going to have to close up. I mean, for instance, the prevent defense style he plays at the end of the game was awful. I mean, they scored in like 10 seconds, it felt like. I mean, they just 44-yard catch against the prevent where you wind up with a guy one-on-one running against their best wide receiver way down the field with Corey Couch, who's giving up 4 inches on the guy. Like, that's not how you draw it up for your prevent defense, right? When you're up by 2 scores and there's not much time left.
That's why I asked Izubee the question I asked him. I mean,
Yeah.
I was a little concerned.
Yeah, so we're not going to sugarcoat it, but there were some great moments, and you could see those. Okay, we pointed those out because they won the game. Let's enjoy it a little before we say, here's all the problems. The offense, though, didn't have those problems, right? The offense had a bad third quarter, but that's only because they had 7 plays in the third quarter. Every other quarter, they had 100-plus yards, okay? I think they averaged over 8 yards a play every quarter except for the third quarter. And again, the third quarter, A&M started with the ball, and Miami had a kickoff return for a touchdown. So it's not like Miami had a chance to do anything. If you're going 3 and out in one series in the third quarter, you're just out of time, So it wasn't like, coming out of the half, they didn't adjust well to Texas A&M's defense. No, it wasn't that at all. They were dominating on offense the entire game. They had no answers for Shannon Dawson. And the reason is simple. And this is why every defense coordinator in the country should be looking at Miami right now and that's playing against Miami and being like, this might be the best offense we play in terms of systematically, because Shannon Dawson did, again, attack the middle, which is what he does. Okay, I think we have it from the Pro Football Focus analysis. I think it was something like 60, 70% of the pass plays went, I think 70%, even higher, went up the middle of the field. Okay, so you have to defend the middle of the field. Have to. But now Miami has a really good offensive line, and you have to also worry about the running attack that had 250 yards in the opener, right? So you have to defend that at the line. Now, in this game, he showed that, okay, once you stop the middle, once you stuff up the run game and you have your safeties up, I'm going to take shots down both sides to Colby and to Jacoby George and Jacoby Young. And those are hitting for touchdowns. So if you're a defense coordinator, what do? You need 4 safeties, 2 up and 2 back. You need 6 defensive linemen to stop a run game that had 250 yards in the first game. And honestly, they averaged 4 yards to carry this game. Miami just didn't really rely on it because they knew that that's Texas A&M's strength. They could have run for 150, 200 yards if they wanted to. They really could have. But the pass game was there and they took it. So how do you stop this offense? There's nothing the offense didn't do well against a Texas A&M defense that, look, they were terrible last year in certain areas. Okay, run defense specifically last year. But they have 4 stars and 5 stars on this team, okay? This is not a nothing team. And Shannon Dawson obliterated, let's make no mistake about it, Texas A&M's defense. There was no answers. I mean, if there was a 5th quarter in college football, I think their defensive coordinator would have said, no, we're going to forfeit the 5th quarter and go home. Because there was nothing they could do. There was just nothing they could do. And I think, honestly, that this offense is going to average 35-plus points a game for the season. I really do. There's just, as long as Tyler Van Dyke stays healthy, because you saw Tyler on point, making good decisions, and he's able to now audible at the line. I remember there's a play where he came up and audible to something, he audible to something, and I can't remember what it was now. It's in the write-up. I've just been doing so many write-ups. And it hit for a big play. He recognizes what's going on. And there was another play where he had Xavier, and this is another great thing these coaches do. And I don't want to go on too long, but this is the last thing I'll say. So in the past, against 2 high safety looks, this is the end of the first half, right? So Miami has the ball. They're trying to score to go ahead to go into the locker room. So Texas A&M, you know what they're playing, right? They're playing 2 high safety. They're playing, not a prevent, but they're playing a soft either zone or man-to-man or whatever. They're not giving you stuff over the top. And Miami does a max protect, okay, with a tight end and running back helping protect. And on the left side, they have 2 receivers, Xavier Restrepo and Colby Young, both going out for routes at a decent depth. I think one's going to maybe 20 yards down the field. The other's 10 yards down the field, okay? And what they do at the end of the run, because Tyler's, they're not open initially, right? And what they're trained to do then is come back to Tyler, which is something we haven't seen these receivers do. They just give up on routes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, well, at my spot. I guess that's the end of the play. They came back, and both guys were wide open. Okay, he could have thrown to Xavier or Colby. You could see it in the GIF, and he threw it to Colby and Colby broke a tackle. It was maybe a 20-yard gain or something. But it's just these little details that is great coaching and players understanding moments in the game, and the moments aren't too big for them anymore. Players used to panic, like you saw. I think with Devontae Brown panicked, right? They had double coverage with Cam and Devontae on one receiver on a deep ball thrown up for grabs. And Devontae just grabs the receiver by the back of his jersey and throws him down. And he panicked. Miami used to do that all the time. And I don't want to pick on Devontae. I'm just using that as an example of what this team always used to do. And now when it only happens once, you notice it, right? But it used to be mistake after mistake after mistake on defense. This defense had 9 missed tackles the whole game. A&M had 8 missed tackles just in its secondary. Just in its secondary in that game, okay? Miami is playing sound defense. Miami is playing excellent offense. Both schemes are working for the most part. Yeah, there's some concerns that Lance Guidry has to get shored up. But for the most part, both schemes are I think, are really, really good. So I'm very optimistic about the rest of the season and moving beyond that. Like, everything to me is like pie in the sky now. You know, we didn't know coming into the year, and I kept saying it. Like, we don't know. They have 41 new players. Now we know. They played a decent team, and honestly, they whooped their butts.
Well, they were 60-40 run pass on offense, and Tyler Van Dyke threw for 374 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. And for a quarterback that's hoping to get back into the relevance chart in college football and have people get back to looking at him as one of the top quarterbacks in the game, this was exactly what the doctor ordered. And now Tyler has something to build on here, and hopefully we'll go on and have a great season. So tons of analysis, tons of coverage on the website from the big weekend for the football team. If you haven't checked everything out, make sure you do. And we're going to turn the page a little bit today. We're going to be talking to Mario Cristobal. We're going to be talking to the coordinators. We will review some of the things that happened in the Texas A&M game. We'll be looking ahead to their short week here. They'll play Bethune. We are not going to do a lot of advanced coverage on Bethune-Cookman. I don't think you guys want that or need that. We're going to focus on the team. We're going to focus on recruiting that is going on because there's a lot of it taking place. There was a big impact from the game the other night, and we're going to talk about that because Stephen Wagner's been patiently sitting there for 26 minutes, and now it is his moment in time. I am going to shift gears to the fact that there were 80 recruits in attendance. Yeah, loosen up, Stephen. 80 recruits in attendance at Hard Rock Stadium on Saturday night. Miami laid it all out there on the table in terms of recruiting. They invited everybody. They wanted their top recruits there to see that this program had made a lot of progress, and they were confident going in that they were not going to disappoint. And even when things went bad early, the one thing I noticed about the Miami sideline, there was nobody panicking. Everybody was calm from Mario Cristobal on down. It was just, listen, the game's just starting. We're down 10 points, but let's get to work. And my phone's lighting up, from friends and subscribers, and everyone's freaking out. And I just was like, telling everybody, calm down. It's early in the game. If they put a good drive together here and get a touchdown, everything is cool. And sure enough, that was when Miami had their first touchdown drive, and everybody out there that was texting me, calm down, and they were able to go move forward from there. So, Steven, you got 80 recruits sitting there. Everybody's watching this. It's a very exciting game. Miami looked very good for a lot of it. How much did the program help itself with recruits by that performance Saturday night?
Well, and I feel like we talked about this a little bit last week too. This was a game that Miami definitely had to win from a recruiting standpoint. You look at last year, they go 5-7, and somehow they end up bringing in the number 6 class in the country. And granted, I think that we will see some more of that now that we're in an age of NIL and transfer portal and all this stuff where you can really revamp a roster no matter how your season goes or how your previous season goes. But that's definitely kind of the exception and not the rule. And, if we're being frank, Miami to this point, you look at the recruiting rankings, I don't think that they've really recruited quite to the level that a lot of people expected. They've had some pretty big misses, especially on that interior defensive line. And even with some skill guys, something that we'd heard very consistently was, Miami really does interest me. That's a program I really do have my eye on, but I've got to see if they're going to win because, I can't go to a program that's going to be a really, really bad 5-7 with an atrocious offense and a horrendous defense. And yesterday, I think Miami really proved to a lot of their recruits. I think Miami now has something that they can point at and say, guys, this is what the system looks like whenever we're working, whenever we're clicking, and whenever we're taking a step in the right direction. Now Mario Cristobal has concrete evidence, hard proof that he can point to and say, guys, look, this is proof that the system is working. This is proof that we're taking the steps that we want to take. This is proof that we're willing to change. I mean, hiring an offensive coordinator like Shannon Dawson and really developing, a really dynamic offense. I remember talking to one recruit's father earlier this summer, or actually, I should say back in the spring, whenever Shannon Dawson was initially hired. And me and him kind of said, man, we kind of feel like this is the biggest hire that Mario Cristobal has had, or the most important hire that Mario Cristobal's had since he brought in Joe Moorhead to be his offensive coordinator at Oregon. Just in terms of, kind of the sense of urgency that we were really seeing a lot of offensive recruits have. And I think Miami really took a good step forward with a lot of their guys, especially in the 25 and 26 classes, the 24 class. At this point, I really do think the 24 class is most about, the relationships that you've already established, building on what's already there, generating your own momentum. And I do think that, don't get me wrong, these game visits absolutely are very important. But I kind of felt like a lot of the importance of yesterday's visit, or Saturday's visits, I should say, were for the 25 and 2026 guys. We heard a lot of 2025 and 26 guys really getting excited. I mean, Wade Charles, even the 4-star wide receiver out of Boynton Beach, he committed to Miami just a day after the game. To him, Miami coming out and really smoking A&M and lighting things up on offense, that was kind of the icing on the cake for him. And I think it's going to be the icing on a cake, or it's going to be the attention grabber for a lot of these other 2025 and 26 guys too. I do think that Miami definitely made some progress with LJ McCray and Zay Mincy, the 2024 4-star defensive lineman and safety from Mainland. Those are definitely two of Miami's top priority uncommitted targets still out there. I think Miami took a good step forward with both of those guys, and I think Miami has a little bit of reason to be, optimistic, or maybe, hold on to a little bit of hope with those recruits, even though I don't think the recruiting prediction machine favors either of them to Miami at the moment. I do think that Miami made some progress there. But yeah, Saturday's win was absolutely a humongous win off the field, just as much as it was on the field, because now Mario Cristobal knows that he has a product that he can point to and sell.
Izubee, Stephen mentioned the Wade Charles commit. Talk to us about how significant that is. He's a 2025 wide receiver. He's ranked a 4-star at the moment. How big of a deal is this for the Miami Hurricanes?
Yeah, Wade Charles is one of my favorite wide receivers in that 2025 class, and it's not because we share the same last name. His Instagram name is Take Him Deep 9, and I feel like that's the perfect way to describe him, because if you throw it up to him, he's going to take him deep and score. I know during the summer, Gary, we both had the chance to watch him at one of the Miami prospect camps, and you were like, who is that kid? And then it ended up being Wade Charles. He's 6'3", 185. I feel like he's the perfect build you want for outside receiver. He's got the length, he's got the size, he's not too skinny, he's not, a musclehead that's jacked that can't move. He moves well for a size, has a great catch radius, makes great contested catches, and makes, the circus catches that you love. And he's just a player that, like Steven mentioned, the proof is kind of in the pudding now. He saw what Miami could do. He wanted to lock in early, and that's something that he mentioned when he spoke with Steven yesterday. He wanted to get on Miami's board and, let them know, hey, I'm locked in with the Canes. And what better way to do that than announce, your pledge to the program after watching them live, after seeing what they can do. And that 2025 class itself at wide receiver is when I feel like Miami's going to make a really big splash. And, they have Wade Charles out of West Palm Beach at Palm Beach Central. You have Nashawn Montgomery coming out of West Palm Beach as well. You go a little south, you have Cortez Mills out of Homestead. And then, a few other guys, Kamari Williams, another teammate of Wade and Charles, who I feel like is a name we should watch in the coming days too, because he was at the game as well at Palm Beach Central. So a bunch of talented 2025 wide receivers. Miami got their first one on board, and I do feel like a few more, dominoes might fall in the coming days with these 2025 guys, because they were all very, very impressed with what they saw at Miami.
Yeah, I mean, it's really getting the Canes off to a nice start for 2025, and they've already got a quarterback in that class, and in Luke Nickel, and so things looking good there in terms of 2025. And of course, they got to finish 2024. Both of you guys talked to all of those kids that were there at the game on Saturday night. How about 2024, Stephen? Obviously a lot of commits are already on the board. I think Saturday night would have reaffirmed those, I would think. But how about the work that's left to be done? How big of an impact do you think that game will make on the current recruiting class?
Yeah, I do definitely think that it is going to. I definitely do think that it is going to make an impact. Because, like I said a moment ago, there really are some guys out there in this 2024 class that are like, man, I like Miami. I really do. And, I want to consider this program. I want to give them a really serious look. Heck, I'd even consider playing for them. But I need to see that this isn't just going to be a repeat of last year. The first name that comes to my mind is Jeremiah Smith. Now, I haven't had a chance to catch up with Jeremiah, but one thing that him and everyone in his camp was really hammering over the summer was, we're going to watch Miami, but we need to see them explode on offense. Saturday, Miami exploded on offense. That was exactly what guys like Jeremiah Smith needed to see. I talked to Chance Robinson after the game, and he was just kind of all smiles, and he was like, yeah, they did exactly what they said they were going to do. They were men of their words. They played exactly the way that we expected them to play. They looked exactly the way that we expected them to look. Everything just went, as good as it possibly could. And you have to think this has to have a trickle-down effect with some of these other 2024 targets that are still on the board. And heck, that even goes for some 2024 targets who might be committed to other programs right now. And right now I'm talking about the offensive side of the ball. But I think about guys like Ja'Cory Barney, who committed to Nebraska earlier this summer after Miami tried to make a really aggressive late push in July. That's definitely something that I think is going to have an impact on guys like him. Just said a moment ago, Jeremiah Smith, retaining current commits like JoJo Trader. This really is going to be something that I think really can't be overlooked.
How is there anything that you feel that Miami can do now in the present to capitalize on this victory? Did anybody seem like they were close to committing for this 2024 class? The guys you talked to, I mean, let me think, like, a couple guys that are out there, LJ McCray with the 4-star defensive lineman was there. Did anybody sound to you like they could imminently pull the trigger?
There weren't any guys who imminently sounded to me like, yeah, these guys are just about to make a decision. This is what put Miami over the top. I didn't really get that impression, but I did really get a good feeling of a lot of guys saying, like, basically more or less kind of the energy of, man, I hadn't been thinking about it that much, but now Miami definitely gives me something to consider. That win was absolutely massive, but I think with a lot of these guys, we are still kind of in a little bit of a wait and see with Miami because, like Matt said earlier, it's only the second week of the season. We've got a long way to go in this year, and to be frank, Miami still needs to prove that this is sustainable. And this wasn't just a one-off fluke, and they didn't just have one great game against a defense that frankly wasn't very good. Didn't live up to expectations a year ago. Didn't look like it was going to live, or doesn't look like it's going to live up to expectations this year either. So I think that there is still quite a ways to go. And I wouldn't say that yesterday really put anyone over the top, or any 2024 guys, I should say, over the top in terms of starting to think along those commit lines, because obviously Wade and Charles 2025 4-star did commit. But I do think that if Miami can prove that this is sustainable, that these performances are sustainable, and this form of winning is sustainable, then I think things start to get very, very interesting in October and November.
All right, so we have a lot of coverage on the Wade and Charles commit, and we will continue to, a lot of recruiting this week. I mean, listen, the games against Bethune-Cookman, we can only cover that so much, to be totally honest with you guys. So we are going to flood you with recruiting news this week and updates, and you've got that to look forward to. Again, today we'll have coordinator talk with Shannon Dawson and Lance Guidry. We'll have multiple availabilities with Mario Cristobal. So a lot coming on the website later today, in addition to this steady stream of recruiting coverage. So that's going to do it for this morning for Good Morning CaneSport. We thank you guys once again for starting out your morning with us. Hit your subscribe button and like button. It helps us with the algorithms at YouTube in growing our audience. If you are not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, please head on over to our website and join our community of fans. It's a very happy community right now after Saturday night, and the message boards were rocking. And I think you'll have a lot of fun if you come and join the club, so to speak, and come be a part of our website. So for Matt, I'm taking bows, Shodell, because I knew all along the Canes would play great. He's Stephen Wagner. He's Izubee Charles, and I'm Gary Ferman. Thank you once again, everybody, for making us part of your morning, and we'll see you guys again next time.